Yeah, let us also resolve that whatever happens on Thursday, and let there be no doubt about what the media will say immediately after the debate, Joe Biden won. The following is also true, that a man who ran for president by running away and hiding in his basement wants to do the same thing, remain in hiding. That seniority is no defense against an endless supply of senior moments. That Biden's candidacy would be impossible without a compliant corporate media, and that CNN is a complicit in this fraud against the American people. And yes, let us resolve that Biden will call Trump a felon and a fascist several times over. Anything more than this is too much for Joe Biden to remember, because CNN did actually put some rules in place. And the only thing the old man can have is a pen, a pad of paper, and a bottle of water. No notes, no side meetings with his aides. That's what we're told. Anything in general is too much for Biden. We have seen that too many times, remember, in recent weeks, as he wanders off, confused, to be brought back by the leaders of the G7 in Italy, or another former president, Barack Obama, on stage in Hollywood as he leads him off. Anything Trump does to press this point, so long as he speaks better and more authoritatively than Biden, is a win. But he does have to demonstrate more tact and more restraint than he did during his first debate back in 2020. That, I would suggest. A little more humor, a little more levity, maybe just a touch of sarcasm. You know how I love that. But he should, because that will be a big win. And he already has the wind at his back. Polling shows him consistently winning the critical battleground states. And now we've seen him draw even in Virginia and Minnesota, too. He has the momentum, does Donald Trump. So let Biden have his time at the mic. Let Biden ramble so the American people can see it. Let him lie about things like the economy. The people know, well, they know better, that it's not better. Let him say he reveres the presidency, too, much to have Trump to ruin it. And let him say the mindless things about saving democracy, even though we don't live in a democracy, but a representative republic. These are the known knowns of Biden's pitch, the predictable phrases of a man without a plan, of a candidate with nothing to say, whose campaign is both an insult and, frankly, an embarrassment. We also know what the moderators will ask President Trump. Regarding a presidential pardon, Trump should promise one. Trump should promise to pardon Hunter Biden, nothing more. Anything else would be a distraction. Trump should dismiss any questions concerning his own trials, except to say the criminalization of politics is wrong. Biden is too intemperate to agree with Trump, of course. Biden is also too extreme to say moderation among prosecutors is a virtue, that we need to put an end to lawfare and restore equal justice under law. The moderators are themselves immoderate because they are journalists in name only. Let's see the starting lineup for CNN on Thursday. First, we have Jake Tapper. Listen to this.
The dehumanizing rhetoric of Adolf Hitler is once again alive and well on a national political stage. This time, of course, in the United States. Donald Trump, a couple times over the weekend, referred to immigrants from South America, Africa, and Asia. He did not mention Europe. South America, Africa, and Asia as, quote, poisoning the blood of our country, which it's not hyperbole. That does very directly echo Adolf Hitler's language.
So, okay, comparing Trump to Hitler, incredibly intellectually lazy. Got it. But he also described the 2020 election this way, right after Biden, quote, won. Here it is.
But now the Trump presidency is coming to an end. To an end. With so many squandered opportunities and ruined potential, but also an era of just plain meanness. It must be said, to paraphrase President Ford, for tens of millions of our fellow Americans, their long national nightmare is over.
Yeah. And let's not forget Dana Bash, the second Chicken Noodle News moderator whose husband was among those, the 51 who signed the alleged intelligence experts who signed the letter calling the Hunter Biden laptop Russian disinformation. Yeah, she's married to that guy. And says here it is unfortunate the Supreme Court didn't take Trump off the ballot altogether.